Thumbs up when you're ready. It's 6:30. All right. Hey, good evening and welcome to Figure It Out here at Calvary Chapel, Santa Barbara. I'm Dr. Dave Newton. Glad you're here. If you're a visitor for the first time, we welcome you. And if you're watching for the first time online, thanks for checking us out. We're doing a current study here in Calvary Chapel, Santa Barbara's 50th year. They started 1976, and so next September it'll be 50 years. So we're in our 50th year, and we're asking the question, in 50 years, has anything changed? And of course, lots of stuff has changed worldwide. And the big question, of course, is, has anything changed in Bible prophecy? And my position, of course, is that prophecy hasn't changed, but how we interpret it has changed quite a bit. And 2 weeks ago on session 11, we did the first part on advances in AI, and we took a look at things that are pretty interesting about artificial intelligence and why it provides a really good explanation for many of the things we see in prophecy. We just took a little beginning portion from Revelation 13, and of course we didn't have enough time to cover all of it, so we'll do part 2 this evening. And so just a quick summary, for those of you who were here 2 weeks ago, or if you've seen the video, AI originally started as just being a descriptive tool, then it advanced to becoming a predictive tool, and you could do forecasting with it. And then it became, in the last several years, generative, which means it can generate things. But even within the generative stage or phase of its development, it has now gone through 5 layers of how even generative has advanced. At level 1, we had expert systems. At level 2, context-based. I explained these last time. Most of you are probably familiar with a chatbot, something like ChatGPT or Meta or Copilot or Gemini or Grok or something. And those are narrow domain-based level 3 advancements of generative AI. So you're actually using something that's generative. And then reason-based is level 4. And then level 5, we kind of began to touch on that last week, is called Agentic-AI. And that's where the AI program actually becomes an agent. And think about the word agent or agency. Agency or an agent means you're working on behalf of someone else. You're their agent, or you are providing the agency function. And so in level 5, which we're currently in right now, it's really advancing. But as I've said before, we're only on maybe the first 10 or 15% of what AI is going to be. And so we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and there's still so much that's coming out in the next several years. And we were taking a look at some of the issues in one really key passage in Revelation chapter 13. We looked at 4 of those 2 weeks ago. We'll look at the rest tonight. And I did say, hey, if you'd like to try to stay up to date on AI, I explained, a couple magazines that I read, and of course I go to the Consumer Electronics Show every year in Las Vegas. But at the very least, one thing you can do, and about 4 or 5 of you have already done this, is just go to Fast Company magazine online and sign up for their AI decoded email. And once a week, you'll get an email in your inbox, and it has a short article, and it's something new about AI, and it's written for lay people. It's not a technical article or something. And Jerry, I sent you the link. Did you read the first one? How was it? Good. Okay, see? So Jerry is now on Fast Company AI Decoded, and it's easy. Just, again, you can just search for that and sign up. And of course, we did mention last time that AI is in the Bible, and I know you saw that. Abram pitched his tent between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And then, of course, as Joshua came into the land of Canaan, he burned all the AI and made it a heap forever to this day, and even took the king of AI and hang him on a tree. So, and we looked at a bunch of kings of AI last week, 2 weeks ago, if you remember some of the names of who's who out there in terms of the field. So hope you can always answer anybody who asks, is AI in the Bible? You can point to these 2 passages. But the main passage we're looking at, if you have your Bibles, is in Revelation chapter 13. And we read through this last time. And we're getting up now to 4 additional components that come up regarding some very interesting events or things that happen. And we're going to see how, I believe, AI provides a very, very logical explanation for how this functions. And so last time we looked at compelling worship, performing signs, bringing fire from the skies, deceiving people. And then tonight we're going to take a look at creating an image, giving an image what seems to be apparently life, and then designing and executing the mark, and then what we call a deep fake resurrection. And I have a little more details on how that might look from that passage. So again, we talked about the stages. AI number one, knowledge-based. The big game that they're all heading toward is called artificial general intelligence. You'll read articles about AGI. And as I said before, some of the experts say we're only about 5 to 7 years away. Others disagree and say, nah, it's more like probably 10 to 15 years before we're there. Others, of course, are saying, we're still maybe a couple decades away from true artificial general intelligence where it can actually think and picture it this way. AGI would be at a place where AGI would set up its own agents, and those agents would do tasks on behalf of the AGI, and literally no human in the loop of any kind. And then there's context-based systems. Talked about the narrow domain, which is most of you are familiar with if you've used ChatGPT and asked it a question, can you get me something? And it comes back. And always remember, GPT is a generative, pre-trained transformer, okay? And so generative, meaning it's going to be able to generate something. It's been pre-trained. Remember, these all these programs, these AI programs, spend just nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're training. They're learning all kinds of additional algorithms about language and how we do statements and sentences and responding to questions. And so they're constantly learning and being trained. And these are some of the ones that are probably the most popular that are out there. Last time we asked for a show of hands, who's been trying out Grok or who tried out Gemini, or have you, asked Copilot to do something for you? Linda said she's not quite ready for AI to take care of all her banking for her and pay all the bills and everything like that. She says, I'd like to be involved in that a little bit more. So we'll talk about some of that. And then, of course, when it really gets up to level 4, which is a reason-based system, the big breakthrough was a couple years ago. The chips today run at 5 megahertz, which is 5 billion instructions per second that it can do. And so they got to the place where they could actually allow for up to 1 trillion parameters within a search in terms of how to collate, organize, and curate the data into the format you're looking for. And that seems pretty mind-boggling. I mean, you can barely even comprehend that. But the VLMs, the very large language models, instead of just LLMs, they're going to move into what are 40 to 50 trillion iterations or permutations in coming up with a final report for you. Now, again, while everybody goes ooh and ah and gets all excited about that, please remember the computing power that is used to do that is massive. I mean, it creates a lot of heat on those chips, on those motherboards, and requires a lot of electricity. I commented on that 2 weeks ago. And so you have to understand that those many parameters, yeah, it gives you much better results. But can you imagine if you had 20% of the planet all doing some kind of a AI inquiry with an agent at the same time simultaneously, how much electricity is going? In fact, if you remember, I told you worldwide by 2030, 20% of electricity worldwide will be used for AI. I mean, think about heating homes, cooking your food, driving your trucks. Think about that. 20% will be AI related. Okay, so we have to have more power. So we talked about that. And that's what I mentioned before. Make sure if you can, go to Netflix sometime and watch the film Nuclear Now. It's from Oliver Stone, and it'll really help you. He does a really good job. You might be surprised that a guy like Oliver Stone would be very pro-nuclear, but it's really well done. It's all the data's in there, and it really helps you understand that, especially for California, if we're going to be involved in AI, it's not going to happen with wind turbines and solar panels and water, okay? Just not going to happen. We have 40 million people in here, and there's no way you're going to have enough electricity to be one of the key drivers of AI globally. That's why other states like Texas and others are, in Wyoming, are building what are called these SMRs, these small remote nuclear power facilities, and they're infinitely safer than the ones from the 70s and 80s, and much more efficient. So again, check that out sometime. So last week we looked at our first big passage was Revelation 3:12, that it could compel worship, and certainly I walked you through how AI, using what's called BCI, brain computer interface, the idea that you could actually run a device with your thoughts, And so they're starting to hook up and recognize certain brainwaves. Now, of course, that's really exciting if you have a prosthetic arm, or you have a prosthetic leg, or some kind of artificial device on your body. Pretty amazing. You know, you could actually train over time, and the system can actually understand how you think, where the brain waves come from, and you could actually start to figure out how to move your prosthetic hand or move your limb. So that's the good. Of course, there's always a dark side to technology as well. And it could get to the point where you could actually have, and they've already started this, telephones would, you know, we're gonna be the generation, probably the last generation, that pulls a phone out of your pocket. Last couple of years at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, they all talked about the fact that there's going to be a generation soon that will say, hey, grandma, oh, hey, dad, did you used to have a phone that you carried around and you actually touched the buttons and did things? And the bridge on that right now is a lot of it's now voice activated. You turn your phone on with a sight, you know, facial recognition, and then I don't even think I ever type a text anymore. I just say, you know, I say the person's name, I speak it, I look. If it's close, that's good, and I hit send. And but the next is going to be just an implant that goes in your ear, and then everything you want to do will just be voice activated, and you're the one that will hear it. And we even talked about augmented reality glasses, that right now the glasses are, you know, really fashionable. Like Meta has a partnership with Ray-Ban for the Ray-Ban glasses for AR. But we're eventually going to get to, and they already have the prototypes, it'll just be like a contact lens. You'll just put it in your eye, and you'll be able to have data and all kinds of images and stuff come up. While you're engaging in your actual reality, you'll augment your reality with that screen. And so as you keep moving in that technology direction, BCI, brain and computer interface, could actually get to the place where you could have a global program that requires everybody to worship the Antichrist. And it would be very easy to implement, and everybody would have get dialed into it instantly. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks after the 1st of January. And then we also talked about items 2 and 3, performing great signs and making fire come down. And I apologize, last week when I was editing my slides at the end, trying to get it down to an hour, I lost 2 slides that I wanted to have in. I took them out, and I realized they weren't there last week. So a quick reminder for you that we covered this last week, great signs, and kind of refers us to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, that the lawless one will be revealed in accordance with power, signs, false wonders, and deception. Everything that he does is false. There'll be a delusion over people to believe what is false. Certainly lines up very nicely with AI. Every once in a while, I take a look at some of the top. I have this one website a friend of mine runs at the University of Notre Dame, and they have the top, like, crazy fake videos for the week. And you know, some guy surfing a 115-foot wave and ending up on the freeway or something like that afterwards. And you have to you look at some of these things. There's a person jumping off of what looks like a 30-story building, doing 3 or 4 flips and landing in the water. And yet anybody would know that, talk to a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and I think anything above like 25 or 28 feet, landing on water is like landing on concrete. And so, so stuff can be really faked, and people can be deluded into believing it. 2 Corinthians, we know that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. But with regard to the comment about the one thing he's going to do, not only is he going to do great signs, and those are kind of the big pictures, but he's also going to make fire come down. And I had some stuff on this last time. We didn't get to it because I took the slide out. But when you think about Sodom and Gomorrah, was all about bringing fire down as a way to demonstrate you are God. You can actually do that. And then you think about 1 Kings chapter 18, Elijah's up on Mount Carmel going up against the priests of Baal. And what does he do? He brings fire down, and it says specifically it was so to prove to everybody that he was from the true God. And that's why I get chills a little bit here in 2 Kings chapter 1, 10 to 12, where the statement is made, these messengers are coming to him, and because they're false, he calls fire down on them to consume these messengers. And Elijah makes a statement to the emissaries that if I am truly a man of God, because they're claiming he's fake. If I'm truly a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and it does, and it burns them. And I think to myself, wouldn't that be the kind of line that a false prophet and the antichrist would use to delude the world by saying, what's the best way we could prove that we are legitimately really gods that should be worshiped, that we are the one true God? Well, what if you brought fire down from heaven? Wouldn't that be very similar to what we see multiple times in the Old Testament? And you can even go to the New Testament. Remember when James and John, the two sons of Zebedee, would come out of a city where Jesus was not well received? And they would say, Master, let's get out of the city and what? Can we call down fire from heaven to consume them? Remember that? And he nicknamed those guys the sons of thunder because they had all this zeal. But there's another example again, recognizing that to bring fire down is a demonstration that you're truly from God. And yet you can think about how this counterfeit, what's the main sign? There's many signs he does, but one of them is to bring fire down from heaven. Think about what that would be like in terms of convincing people, especially if a great deluding influence comes over them so that they would believe what is false. It really fits well together. And then our fourth one was that he deceives. So all the stuff he does is deep fake, not real. Deep fake, of course, is a 2025 term here in the 21st century, but there's no deep fake in the scriptures. But a good deep fake is where you look at it and you have to stop and think to yourself, wait a minute, is this real, what I'm looking at? And so you have to really double check some things. Because in 1 Timothy it says that in the latter times, some are going to fall away from the true faith, paying attention instead to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons by the hypocrisy of those who openly lie. Because they're seared in their own minds, they literally, like a branding iron, they have no conscience. They can put forth the falsehood, they can put forth the lie and treat it as if it's truth, and people will do what? They'll accept it. They'll take it right in. And a couple other passages for you, also from that slide from last week that I missed. I apologize, but the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers. So people, especially with the church removed and off the scene during that time of the last 70th 7-year period of time for Israel that Daniel spoke of, we know that Satan deceives the entire earth, Revelation 12. John 8, Jesus himself defined him as he's the father of lies. That means he's the one who is the parent. If there's a lie, he's the one that got it started. The very first lie was the one he made to himself from Isaiah chapter 14 when he said, I will make myself up above the Most High God. And so he is the father of lies. We know the armor of God is something we're told by Paul, you put it all on for the purpose of what? Going up against Satan's deception. That's why you have the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness. You have your shield of faith. You have your sword of the Spirit. And then finally in Matthew 24, Jesus in his Olivet Discourse says, there are going to be false Christs, and the one way you'll know that they're false is they're going to deceive with signs and wonders. And so it's laid out right there. So when you get to the end times and when you see the son of perdition, we won't be here for that, but when the son of perdition, this little horn, the prince of those who is to come, they are going to demonstrate that they fit in exactly with Jesus' own words, that they are false because everything they do is built on the idea of false signs and wonders. So tonight, let's begin our new material. Look at Revelation chapter 13. Look at verses 14 and 15 if you have your Bibles open. This sidekick of the Antichrist is this false prophet. He is going to go ahead and have them create an image of the Antichrist. And the term image is eikon. You can see it there in the Greek, epsilon, iota, kappa, omicron, and nu. And so the idea there is eikon, and the way you write it in English is eikon. In our English language today, we write it how? We write it icon, an icon. And an icon just means what? A likeness of the original. So if you have a little icon that you're using for some kind of a tab or an application or something on your computer or whatever, you're basically an image to be like the original. And that's the key. Think about that. He's going to have an image made, an icon of the original. And so the second thing he's going to do is he's going to give pneuma. In the Greek is breath or spirit, but it's always used in the context of putting in real life. having something have life. In Genesis, when the Lord is finished making Adam, it says that he breathes into his nostrils the pneuma, the breath of life, and he becomes a living soul, a living spirit. And so in the same way, you could read this as he tells all on earth to create an icon of this beast, and he gives pneuma, he gives life to that image. And that's the key there. He could have said he gives life to the beast. Remember, he's not talking about the person, he's talking about the image, the icon. And so he gives life to the icon so that the icon can speak and can then initiate the killing of any who wouldn't worship himself. And so for a long time, oh, by the way, it's also mentioned in Revelation 14, 15, 16, 19, and 20. They continually come back to those who were completely under the icon of the Antichrist. And in Romans chapter 1, we hear that claiming to be wise, they become fools and exchange the glory of the immortal God for icons made to look like anthropos. And you know, anthropos sounds like anthropology, the study of man, anthropology. And so what they're really saying here is an icon or a likeness of an anthropos, the likeness of a human, the likeness of a man. And it's neat how the Lord already anticipated that in the early chapter of Romans, talking about the fact that there will be a time when people will actually put that aside, the truth, forget about God, and then instead substitute an image, an icon. And that's directly related to what we see in Revelation 13. I hope you see that. I mean, that's a wonderful definition that I'm not just making this up or trying to come up with my own conjectures. I mean, this really fits well. And it even fits really well with Daniel, chapter 2, where he's talking about this image. It's icon again in the Greek Septuagint version of the Old Testament, but in the original Hebrew, it's talking about a reflection of. And that same term, and he says there's going to be a synthesis of iron mixed with common clay. One is really strong, one is quite fragile. If you had an iron bar and you dropped it on the ground, it just thud. Take some pottery made of clay and drop it, it bursts. And Daniel makes a specific statement prophetically to the end times by saying their descendants of the prince of the people who is the people of the prince who is to come, they will not mix or adhere with the two, just like pottery cannot mix with iron. And so the idea here is there could be an illusion here, and we'll look at it in deeper detail in about 4 weeks, that in fact the iron mixed with clay, there's lots and lots of attempts the last several hundred years to have theologians describe what that really means in that statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream about the world empires. And as you get down to the legs and the feet, the legs, there's 2 of them, and they're iron, and that's the Roman Empire. There's an Eastern Empire based in Rome and Italy, and there's a Western Empire there, and then the Eastern one is based in Constantinople. Later on, it's in Byzantium. And interesting enough, the question is, could that also be directly referring to human mixed with some kind of hybrid or technology? They don't really go together, but they might tend to be mixed because the iron mixed with clay, which are the feet of this future empire, seems to be that there's some strength in it, but there's also some fragility in there. And I think it's really fascinating when we get into this idea. We'll take a look at what they call the new field of transhumanism. And the idea is that it's going to be the melding of technology, software, and hardware with human beings. Now, for many of us, we look back to 1984, and we think about the Terminator. And we think about, it's 41 years ago that movie came out. Isn't that crazy to think it was 41 years ago? And yet in that movie, there was a special alloy, the Hyperdyne, whatever he was, the Cyberdyne technology, the new T1000 or something, and they could meld human tissue over the top of this metal alloy, and they could send it through time, and it had the appearance of a man. And Arnold got to play the first Terminator, if you remember, and turned into a major franchise with probably 5 others came after it. But that concept was such science fiction at the time, And yet more and more and more, they're looking at the possibilities of melding, especially it starts with the brain-computer interface, BCI, from artificial intelligence, and then starting to meld, could you create prosthetic limbs that aren't so clunky and plain and things, but you could actually have them have living tissue on them, and there have been experiments already that have begun to do that kind of thing. This gets us thinking then about Elon Musk launched in 2016 a company called Neuralink, and you can take a look at their website and read about them. And again, this is one of the classic examples of a technology that on the front end looks extremely promising. I mean, if I had lost a leg in Iraq or in Afghanistan, and I was a veteran or something, or as a firefighter, I lost my arm in a saving somebody in a building or something like that, would it be great to hear about a technology that might, in time, allow the AI to learn from how I move my eyes and how I think about things and how it records my brain waves, and I could start to actually know how to think about how to move my prosthetic hand or how to move my prosthetic leg. And so huge upsides. But here's the big question. If humans can use the mind to control an outside device, what's the flip side of that? Can an outside device be used to control the human mind? And so we always think about it from the standpoint that the mind will be the originator of the action, and then the device follows that. But they're now talking about the fact that, well, the device can now start to interact, because with AI in the device and AI in the BCI that you're using, they can start to learn over time and can then anticipate the things you'd like to be able to do with your hand or your prosthetic leg or whatever it happens to be. So even though Elon Musk is the founder of Neuralink and right on the forefront of these cutting-edge, amazing technologies for those who have had any kind of physical disabilities, listen to what he says. Here's just a couple quotes. This is from Vanity Fair magazine, an interview he did in 2014. In there he says, "With AI, we are actually summoning the demon to the surface." And he goes in to describe how there's a lot of really good things that'll come with this. But as with any technology, think of any technology from the last 40 years. With any technology, all the good also has what? A dark side to it, where people start to think, oh, I know how I could use that. And suddenly that technology has a really ugly side. You know the actor Ralph Fiennes? Okay. Check out an old movie from the mid-90s called Strange Days. I always like to watch a lot of what I call thoughtful sci-fi, because I'm always interested in how they portray computer-human interfaces, technology, artificial intelligence. Some are just dumb. I don't watch those. But some actually get you thinking about, wow, that's interesting. And in the movie Strange Days, Ralph Fiennes has a friend who's a cop, and there's a technology out there that allows you to have any experience you'd like by wearing this device on your head, and then these small little discs go into this remote player, and then you are having a virtual reality wherever you happen to be. You could go skiing in the Alps, you could go yachting on a 60-foot boat in 50-foot waves off of New Zealand, and all these things. But of course you can imagine there's also what? A dark side. And in the movie, there's a person who's been recording murders in the city, and then on the black market selling these, so you could actually experience what it's like to be involved in that. And so they have to find who this is and all. But the technology isn't goofy or silly. It's actually discussed in the context of very early BCI kinds of mentality. And the National Governors Association had him speak at one of their luncheons in 2019, and Musk said this: AI is fundamental risk to civilization as we know it. Because he's saying we could get to the point, because remember, we're only on 10% or 15% into this, we could get to the point where the AI agents, because they do what's called cyclical reasoning, they start with perceptions of the external environment, then they have these heuristic codes they go through in terms of sequences on the flow chart of trying things, and up to now, it used to be 1 trillion iterations, now they can do 40 to 50 trillion what-ifs. Think about every possible combination, do it in just a matter of less than a minute. Then go and see how the results are, then assess those results and go back to the beginning of the loop, and you can learn through the process, and they can do all that and literally give you something that's been battle tested and tried out, simulated I don't know, a million times, 2 million times over the course of a couple seconds. And then you've got supposedly the best option of all that were available. He says in time, we're going to get to a point where the AI agents will not require a human to start the process. So right now, the way AI works is the human is the prompt. The AI does it really, really fast and brings back a result. And then we tend to curate that answer, and then we decide to maybe go a second level. True Agentic-AI is going to the AI will just run itself and keep trying out the new results that it gets. And the human doesn't have to be involved in it. So, Linda, it'll be presented on the upside as you don't have to think about your checking account anymore. All your bills will be paid every month. You'll have a little statement about your income and your expenses and what's left over. Here's your savings. Everything will be taken care of because once AI follows you through paying your bills for a month or two, it'll say, oh, we've got it. We know what you do. We know how you think and where you like to do things. And then from that point on, you don't have to worry about it. And most people stop and just say, whoa, whoa, whoa. But they also did that with autonomous vehicles, right? A lot of people said, I would never get in a car that didn't have a driver. And yet every time I go down to visit my daughter in Culver City, it's a huge hub for Waymo. And these little Waymo cars are driving around, all the little white cars, and there's no driver in them. And you just get on your phone, you say, I need a quick ride, and the Waymo comes over, and you get in, takes you where you want to go, and you get out, and it charges your card and everything. And they're driving all over the place. Anybody seen the Waymos, the white Waymo cars? Okay, a lot of you have. And so the first time I was at CES, I don't know, 7 years ago, the first time they had autonomous vehicles, a bunch of us who had press credentials for the media were picked up at our hotel by an autonomous vehicle, and it pulls up and the doors open up and there's no one in there. And we drove from the Venetian all the way over to the Las Vegas Convention Center. And we're sitting in there facing each other, like 6 of us, 3 on each side, and the car just drives through. And there were some people who wouldn't get in the car because they were afraid, of an accident or something like that. And so this is, again, where the learning curve keeps developing and you eventually get more and more and more comfortable with the technology. So BCI, this AI new technology, potentially could be the first little step into transhumanism, machines interconnected with people. We already have virtual reality, which is where you're in an isolated environment and you're not seeing anything else outside you. And so you have Apple Vision Pro goggles, you have Meta Quest goggles, things like that. But then you have augmented reality, which is where you're in the room, but there's also something superimposed laid over. It augments your reality, and then you suddenly see something else. Remember 2 weeks ago I showed you the Magic Leap demonstration where the kids are in the middle school gymnasium and the big whale comes up out of the floor and lands in the splash and everything. It's not real, but it looks like it's happening right there in the room. So tonight, number 6, as we drill down on this a little bit, he gives life to the icon so that the image could speak. For centuries, this was always interpreted that a carved wooden sculpture or a stone sculpture of some kind, a statue, was going to be created. And every prophecy book went along with the same thing. In fact, all the ones I read, I kind of said, that sounds logical. They're going to make a statue. Some even said it might be a painting, but most said it would probably be 3D of some kind. And he'd be able to give life to it supernaturally of some kind. But today in 2025, this sounds exactly what you can do with AI in terms of creating lifelike images that can speak. In fact, this will give you something to chew on during the week. We'll cover it in a couple weeks in detail. But in Joel chapter 2, there's a lot of writing out there these days. Is this also describing a future AI army? Because listen to the description. This army can leap on tops of mountains and run like horses. It's not talking about the horses can run like horses. It's saying the army individuals can run like horses and can leap to the tops of mountains. When other armies see them, it causes anguish and their faces turn pale. And you ask yourself, what are you looking at? Are you looking at a T3 Terminator? Are you looking at some kind of a different kind of robot? They can run like mighty men and climb walls. They can march in a line that is never broken. There's no crowding in their perfect unison. They blow past their enemies and never break their formation. They rush the cities and run straight up the walls. The earth shakes when they arrive. Now again, a passage like that couple centuries of interpretation by Bible prophecy scholars and stuff is that, oh, this is kind of metaphor. It's adding some hyperbole to how a really tough army comes in and scares the other side. But you start to read it in light of AI and robotics. Do you remember the movie with Will Smith called I, Robot? Anybody have a chance to see that movie? Okay, not many. There's another one. I know I sound like Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert up here giving you recommendations, but or maybe I'll be Ben Mankiewicz and I'll tell you about the movie. But check out I, Robot sometime. Very interesting kind of idea about the idea that every robot is programmed a certain way, so they cannot do anything counter to their programming, which means they can't disobey, they can't hurt a human, all these things. So the entire society now recognizes there's no crime because the robots are there to help with everything, and they can't possibly do anything negative to humans, except there is the case of a murder that takes place. And the prime suspect, the only one close by on the video, is one of these robots. And so Will Smith is a police officer and kind of has to hunt that down. But again, it's interesting to see how they play out the idea of, oh yeah, the programming takes care of everything. You don't have to worry about any issues any longer. And so that's, again, when you start to think about AI with brain-computer interface. So here's a couple examples of, now again, this is not sci-fi. This is real. These aren't movies coming out talking about the year 2079 or something like that. This is now. There are about, last count, 45 programs you can go to on your computer right now. Some are free. Some will give you a free trial for 2 weeks. And you can actually just create humans with AI. You can decide, oh, I'd like to have an African-American child, boy, maybe between the age of 8 and 9, et cetera, et cetera. And there he is, lower left-hand corner. I like to have a typical college girl. She's white. She has kind of reddish hair. She's in a library. You put all these things in, and AI will search all throughout every public database worldwide, 186,000 miles a second at the speed of light, retrieve all kinds of things, curate it, collate it, do everything, and then package it and present it to you and say, is this what you were looking for? And as you can imagine, we won't spend time tonight, but can you picture the nefarious side of this as well? Just how twisted the darkness of people's minds can be in going out there and creating for themselves all kinds of fake people. Everybody you see on that image on the right-hand side is a computer-generated image made by AI, not by an artist. Just simply by putting in a series of parameters and saying, bring me a guy with a yellow jacket and a black shirt who's in his mid-50s, early 60s, whatever it is, and these are all generated and 3D, and more they're moving into the realm, which we're going to see in a moment, of holographic technology that could actually bring the person right here and put them on stage or put them on the floor. And with AI, you could start to have a conversation. This is real software right now, just so you know. Look at the bottom statement here. Produce user-generated style videos and branded content. It's perfect for e-commerce, creators, and marketing teams. Namely, remember there used to be a casting book, and you said, hey, for our ad about this particular soda, we're looking for a certain kind of person, so we got to go through and find somebody we can cast. Don't do that anymore. You just create the person you need to be the spokesperson for your product, whether for a magazine or an online ad or a TV ad or a podcast or a YouTube video. Every one of these images that you're looking at is not a real person. It's the highest end of the software. So instead of taking 20 seconds to generate, these actually took like 4 minutes. Imagine having to wait 4 minutes for this thing to work, right? But think about that. AI characters that can talk, pose, and sell for you. So you got a product you want to do, and you say, I just can't find the right actor for this thing. Well, let's just make the right actor. Just create it. And then all we have to do is, let's say we bring Deborah in, and we say, Deborah, I'd like you to speak for a minute. And the computer will just record your voice and intonation. And then AI will take your voice and intonation, and it will then instantly be able to create, at a first level, it'll be 275,000 words vocabulary within 10 seconds. And then we could then plug in a script, and let's say the gal second over from the left, who's selling some perfume there, she's holding that. All of a sudden, it's Deborah's voice. and the lips move perfectly, and you hear her with intonation and everything, and somebody would stop and say, wow, that's Deborah Alexander. And you say, well, no, it's not. Well, it is, but it's not. But it is, but it's not. Because it's her voice, but all AI had to do was capture how you pronounce certain vowels and consonants, just get enough of them that you could then do what? You could then create any kind of word with those little bits of information and create a whole script. They're saying this is the upside. Oh, it's just being used to sell product. Can you imagine the downside of this? Imagine stuff you could put out on the web. All of a sudden, Ed, you're spewing off all kinds of hate crimes and everything. Your friends are going, I saw Ed on my computer. What was that? And he goes, it wasn't me. Well, yeah, it's you. It's right here. It's not me. And can you imagine having to try to come out and say that wasn't me, and you're really sincere about that, and yet it looks so close to real. And we're talking about, could this be, they create an image and they give it life so that it can speak and proclaim. Now, this is actually just more of an illustration of what's coming, but do you know right now the fastest growing market in AI on a consumer level, other than for publishing papers and things like that, just on a human level, is that people are creating AI human-like companions. So Luis, it was nice to be friends with you, but I think I'm going to move on beyond just being friends with Luis. I need something else, something a little more beyond Luis. And so I'm going to create my own virtual friend who will really understand me and get me. And I guess you could actually just program this AI to be the perfect friend. And you start to think to yourself, you go, whoa, wait a minute. Are we serious here? And I'm telling you, this is available right now. Many college students right now are coming back to their dorm rooms, and they're finding that it was a really hard day. I had 2 classes, and I had to go to the library or something, and I had to carry my book or something like that. And I'm just exhausted at 3 o'clock because, I'm getting my bachelor's degree and I have to go to class. I have work to do. I can't just sick my AI agent and write all my papers for me and take my exams. Did you see the article? It's about 2 weeks ago. The UC system, specifically UC San Diego, 40% of the graduating class can't do algebra. Simple transitive property on algebra. I mean, I used, when I taught at Westmont, I haven't been there for 13 years, but I'd be in an upper division forecasting class. We'd be doing another topic, but up on the board, I would say something like, I'd say, well, if you have this over here and here, let's just go ahead and divide both sides by D. That'll wipe that out. Now D's on the other side. I'd have people raise their hand. They weren't talking about the model I was doing. They wanted to know, what did you just do? And I was like, it's called 8th grade algebra. Divided both sides by B. It wiped it out on the right side, and now B's on the other side. And they were just like, did you come up with this yourself, Dr. Newton? Yeah, I invented transitive property myself, so think about it, though. Think about it. 40% can't do algebra, and they have a bachelor's degree, okay? And so here's the one that's really, really becoming popular. Virtual AI therapists. So you go online, and you sit and chat with somebody. Well, wait. What did I just say? Chat with somebody? See, I'm getting sucked into this. You chat with a program. And over time, the program will learn more and more about you, Tom, and you can work through your problems and discussions, and the AI program will become more accustomed to who you are and soothe you and be able to provide exactly what you need, because Charmaine, of course, can't possibly rise to that level of compassion and understanding after being married for 50 plus years. I'm being facetious, right? Okay. But do you get where this is going? We can laugh at some of this, and I try to present it in that way, but you have to understand these passages in the scriptures, which were so easy to say, oh, I guess they're going to build some kind of a statue, and he has magic powers, and he gives it life. When you start reading this in the eyes of AI and Agentic-AI and imaging, it's pretty interesting. Here's a little fun we'll have. This is from the web. This is what is a new popular topic. It's called the digital afterlife. So over here in the far left-hand corner, Grandma passed away about 7 years ago, but 2 of her grandkids were under 2 years old when she died. Now they're 7 or 8 years old, and their mom is feeling like, I wish you had had a chance to talk with Grandma and get to know her. Well, now you can. We have a couple video clips from Grandma at one of the barbecues we did about a year before she died. We pull off some of her spoken words from the video, and then we get images of her, feed it all into the AI, and it comes and creates an image of Grandma, 3D, and she can actually talk and interact. And so you got grandkids now sitting with an iPad or a tablet looking at Grandma, who died when they were 2 years old. Now they're 8 years old, and they're talking, "Hey, Grandma, let me tell you how school went today." And she's, "Oh, tell me all about it, honey." Have we stepped over a line, do you think? That's what I call a digital resurrection. Here's a gal talking with her deceased mother, who she misses very much, and you can have a hologram brought of her. We find this with deep fake resurrected celebrities. Princess Di passed away in 1997. AI shows you what she would look like today. Kurt Cobain took a shotgun, a 20 gauge, and blew his head off in 1994, but this is what he would look like today in his mid-50s. They then give Kurt Cobain spoken language into that AI image, and some of the folks who knew him feel really comfortable. They feel like they can interact with Kurt again after 30 years. It's been nice to be able to get back and talk with him again. Who's that? John Lennon, who died 45 years ago in 1980. That's what he would look like today. Did you see the movie Yesterday? About the big change in the big shift in the cosmic shift, and this young guy in Britain all of a sudden has all this Beatles music that he knows, but the Beatles never existed in the shift. So he starts playing all their music. It becomes really popular. But at the end of the movie, he says to himself, "I'd like to go find out whatever happened to John Lennon." And somebody said, "Well, he was never in the Beatles, so he never lived in New York, and he was never shot in Manhattan." And he goes out and finds him. He's living in England, and this is the actor who played him, and this 78-year-old version of John Lennon came to the door, and he was just like but he'd never been in the Beatles. Here's the one that's most crazy. This is John in AI, agentic, generative, domain-based systems, where you can now pay a fee and co-write music with John Lennon. So you can sit down in a room and interact with John Lennon and work on a song, and you'll play something that you came up with, and John will come back and say, "I don't think that's really the one you want to go with," and he'll say this and that, and, "Why don't you try this chord or that chord?" And you'll actually have an interaction, and you'll say, "Yeah, John Lennon helped me write this song." And you were born 30 years after John Lennon was shot. Heath Ledger died in 2008 from New Zealand, right? There he is today. George Harrison passed away in 2001. This is what George would look like today based on AI. Janis Joplin died in 1970. She'd be 83 years old right now. This is Janis. And then there's Buddy Holly. Died in a plane crash at age 23 in 1959. This is what he'd look like today at age 84. Freddie Mercury died in 1991. He'd be 78 years old right now. Who's on the lower left-hand corner? Marilyn Monroe. That's what she'd look like today if she was in her 90s. Johnny Cash died in 2003. Who's that from 1971? Jim Morrison from The Doors. And there's the king, Elvis. He'd be 90, 92 right now. Think about this. Who's that guy? 1975, high school student. 50 years later, oh wait, that's not virtual reality, or that's not age progression AI, that's what? That's real. But you know what I did? I went the next step and I plugged myself in. I said, what would I look like? I'm 66. What would I look like when I'm 86? Oh yeah, well then you don't have a life. You spend time on the computer all day just doing AI for mindless reasons. But so if I'm still teaching here in 20 years, there's 86-year-old Dr. Dave. Okay, isn't it interesting? So you go with something like this and you say, okay, that's kind of fun. There's me in a 50-year spread, 75 to 2025. New Jersey high school student, and then here I am at Calvary in Santa Barbara. But this is what AI, it only took just a little over a minute. And that's me, okay? Interesting, huh? Yes? Oh yeah, well that's what Mark asked. So the question was, what if I just went and took my 1975 figure? Would that come out like that? I think you're going to see there's some differences in how I look between 75 and 25, the 50-year spread. So working with that one, you might get something a little different. And if you'd like, I'll bring that next week. Okay. But I thought this was interesting. Okay. A little bummed that my hair is gone. I don't know if I'm ready for that in 20 years. I just thought I'd still be kind of shaggy and stuff, but we'll see. So, number 7, he initiates a mark. And again, we've talked about the mark before. It's charagma in the Hebrew, in the Greek, and it means a stamp or an imprint. And for centuries, it was always considered an allegory or a metaphor, but we talked several weeks ago about global finance, how it's changing with peer-to-peer transactions and fintech, what we call financial technologies, and how the blockchain is enabling direct access funds transfers that do not need any kind of foreign currency exchange. And you can actually limit an entire population of what they can and can't do based on a system. And yet AI could do that kind of production, deployment, and management today, and AI would manage the whole thing. So consider this. The AI image of the Antichrist could literally be everywhere, all across the globe, as if he's omnipresent. Because what's he trying to do? He's trying to mimic what it is to be the true Messiah, who is to be the Son of God, who is omnipresent, who is omniscient, who is omnipotent. But you could literally plant. Because some people always ask, well, what if his kingdom is somewhere, I don't know, in Eastern Europe or somewhere in the Middle East or something like that? What about people in other places around the globe? How will they ever get to see him and hear about him? We talked about telecom, satellite communications, Facebook, social media. We went through all this back in lessons 1, 2, 3, and 4. But here's another example where you could literally have Antichrist in an AI format involved in interacting with people all over the place. Speaking, advising, everyone all at once. See, it's not a matter that he can only talk to. Remember, you think about the limits of a human is in a room, you can talk to maybe a couple hundred people or a couple thousand in an amphitheater, an arena. But what if you have social media, full satellite, full webs, full interconnectivity, and you can actually bring the full image everywhere? And again, we're not talking about the old-fashioned, Star Wars 1977, help me, Obi-Wan, and you see that little kind of hologram, and it's kind of hissing, and you can kind of see through it. The technology today is crazy how realistic it is. He could literally be worshipped and consulted. Do you remember 2 weeks ago I showed you Mind Air, the Japanese robot that's in the Kyoto temple, and people come in and actually interact with the robot, or Theta Noir, which is the group that's actually worshiping this AI-created entity, or Way of the Future, which is that kind of interesting new God GPT, they call it, up there in Silicon Valley. And finally, literally, the image driver of the global commerce. You could actually drive your commerce by having every bank, every transaction, every store, every online store essentially associated with the image. And so perhaps his mark, which is specifically stated to be on the hand or on the forehead, will be something that is completely invisible. It would literally just be something that, I think I showed several weeks ago, maybe 6 or 7 lessons ago. You can enter stores now just by putting your hand over a little, at the Amazon stores and things like that. Just put your hand over a scanner and you walk right in. There are ATMs now that you walk up to and they just look at your face, scan your retinal imprint, and then you're into your machine and you can go ahead. You don't even need a card anymore. And these are things that we would have seen in movies 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And it was, oh, that's science fiction. When Dick Tracy, talked to his boss on his wristwatch or something like that. My wife breaks out her Apple Watch and she's, looking at text messages. She's looking at photos of grandkids. She's saying, don't forget to call. I mean, it's all happening on a watch. Think about how the technology advances and suddenly all these various prophecies move out of the realm of metaphor and allegory, and they suddenly come into, oh my gosh, this could actually be done exactly as it's stated in the scriptures. So we'll close with this one. Satan was given great power to this therion, which is the term for a ferocious or savage, and that's what they call him, the beast, in most of the English translations. But he's also known as the little horn, the son of perdition, the prince of the people, the people who is to come. He's the prince. And this is, stay with me on this, because this is really, this to me is extremely provocative. John says this, I saw his head, and there's this key word in Hebrew, in the Greek, as if it had been slain. And the word in the Greek there is hos. Omicron sigma, there on the far left there with a little breath accent on top of it, so you say hos. As if essentially means like, but not actually. And you think about, Alicia Silverstone in the movie Clueless. Her famous line she made famous was, as if, right? The Valley Girl talk. But in this context right here, as if, look at what he's saying. He gave power, and I saw his head as if it had been slain. And for centuries, this was typically interpreted as, he was experiencing some kind of a shot to the head or something like that. It was originally thought by the doctors to be a fatal head wound, but it turned out it wasn't. As if, when President Trump was shot in the ear, and they thought maybe they had taken him down, but then found out, okay, it wasn't a fatal head wound. But think about this. His head as if it had been slain, hos. Because the word slain is the term sphazo, which means to mortally wound or to kill. And so it's not that you have to interpret this passage as, well, we thought he had a mortal head wound, but it turned out later on it wasn't that bad. No, it appeared for all intents and purposes to be what? A mortal head wound. But it was as if it had been a mortal head wound. This starts to open up the door for AI imaging. And listen to this. And the seeming fatal wound, and think of that word, the seemingly fatal head wound was healed. So in the Greek, those three words up there are the Greek on the left. Here's how you say them. Thanatos, plage, therapeuo. Now therapeuo, you might recognize that as a root word for our term therapeutic. When something is therapeutic, it helps with healing and getting better. But the key word here is plage in the Greek. It's the middle word over there. It's P, lambda, eta, gamma, and eta again. And you pronounce it plage. And what it actually means is a stripe. So what it's really saying is his seemingly fatal head wound was healed. What it's saying is his seemingly stripes that seemed to kill, the killing stripes, seemed to be healed. And when I saw the word stripes come up in the Greek lexicon, it made me start to think about Isaiah chapter 53, where we're told that the Messiah, by his stripes, we are healed. The original Hebrew, the term is habora, and that means stripes. And in the Greek version of the Old Testament, the LXX, the Septuagint version, it's the term moulopi. And moulopi in the Greek also means stripes. And suddenly I started thinking, wait, we've already got a fake bringing down fire from heaven, which is typically a sign of what? You're really from God. But he can do that, so he must really be from God. We suddenly have that he can do all kinds of powers. We suddenly recognize that there's an image of him that's been brought to life. That's going to obviously delude a lot of people. And then here comes this notion that he had a head as if it had been slain. And the seemingly fatal head wound, the thanatos plage therapeuo, the killing stripes seem to be healed, fits really well with Isaiah 53, that when Jesus is prophetically spoken of by the prophet Isaiah. By his stripes we are healed. This could be yet another way to do what? Tell the world that this is the Messiah. He fulfills Scripture. Think about that. It appears entirely in line with what's attributed to the true Messiah. And listen to this last component of this passage. The entire earth was then amazed and followed after the beast, or the savage, or the ferocious. And that term to be amazed is thumazo. And thumazo is to wonder or to marvel. And it got me thinking about, I found 30 passages in the New Testament. I'm not going to put all 30 up, but here's a couple of them. When Jesus had just finished doing a miracle in Luke chapter 9, all were astonished at what Jesus did. And the term is what? Thumazo. Luke chapter 24, when Jesus was resurrected, the disciples were amazed to find Jesus resurrected. And there we have once again the amazement being attributed to him. So that gets me thinking, are there a lot of things attributed to Jesus in the Bible as he is Messiah that are going to be co-opted by this one who we call the Antichrist? And remember, he's not Antichrist like antifreeze or antidote. Anti in the Greek means what? Pseudo. Similar to. He's similar to the Christ. He's going to be embraced as being Messiah. In fact, he's going to be so well liked because he's able to put together, as we saw from Daniel chapter 9, a covenant or a pact with the many that will allow the Jews to go back into Jerusalem and construct a naos in the Greek, which means a holy place. Might not be a full-blown temple, but they're going to have a place where they can do sacrifices. It's in that place, at the midpoint of that last 7 years, that he goes in and does what? Declares himself to be God. Because what can he do? He can bring down fire from heaven. He can be everywhere all at once. There's an image of him that speaks and is available all throughout the globe, which is going to give people a sense of omnipresence. And even in this last, everybody's going to be amazed because he's going to look as if he was fatally wounded, and yet he had a resurrection from the dead in the exact same way that Jesus was resurrected to fulfill all those passages. Giving you a little bit just this week because it's a lot to take in. I don't want to ask for a show of hands who agree with that. I assume you all agree with that. So, but think about this. For centuries, this has been interpreted as a literal physical resurrection from the dead. And you know what? I'm open to, it very well could be. It could be that the language is talking about a literal physical resurrection from the dead. I agree with that. However, anything like Jesus' resurrection is only going to further legitimize him as being a pseudo-Christ. Because Christ is the Greek word for the Hebrew word what? Mashiach. Means anointed one. Greek is Christos. Hebrew is Mashiach. English is anointed one. So he's going to be legitimately recognized as that Messiah. Others tried to catch the Greek as if, in the Bible commentaries for the last several centuries, to mean that the doctors thought it was a fatal wound, but it turned out, hey, you know what, it wasn't so bad. He's going to pull through. I'll tell you what, if he was shot, it turns out it's not as bad, and he comes, you know, that's not a resurrection, is it? That's, I was shot, we thought it was fatal, but it wasn't. This is going to literally, be as if he's dead, and he does what? He comes back to life and is resurrected. But modern AI provides a very literal basis and context for how to interpret this. And we're just scratching at the surface. So here's a reminder as we close here. The pseudo-Christ, always remember though, he is a person. He is a person. He's not an AI. I've had people come to me and say, you think Antichrist will just be an AI avatar? And the thorough reading of the full scriptural account of who he is he is a person. In fact, in Genesis chapter 3, we're told he is the seed of the serpent. Just as Mary is going to have Jesus as Messiah, there's going to be a false Messiah in the end times. He is the personal pronoun. You don't use that for a software package. And the false prophet is also a he. And here's the clincher for me. If anybody asks you, do you think the Antichrist and his false prophet are just AI? They are judged when Jesus comes at his second coming, and they are thrown into Gehenna. So I cannot imagine the Lord coming back and saying, yes, I'm going to take the 2 AI avatars and send them to Gehenna. Okay. No, they are people, but they are all about what Satan, who works through them, is about, which is what? Deception. Deceiving individuals, causing people to believe what is not true. So AI and Bible prophecy, everything was described by John as he was given the revelation of Jesus Christ through the angel messenger. You always have to remember, the revelation was given by God to Jesus Christ. He then is going to transmit it to John through an angel that's going to spend the time with him going through all the things that John is going to see during that time that he is caught up. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, it says the apocalypsis, or the revelation of God, gave to Jesus to show to his doulos. In the Greek, a doulos is a bondslave, someone who willingly serves a master. The bondslave, the doulos, he sent it and communicated it to John through his angel to his doulos, John. So Jesus has an angel communicate all of this directly through the revelation to John. John wrote down all that he saw and he experienced when he was harpazoed, when he was caught up, Revelation 1:10, into the day of the Lord. And again, I don't know about you, but I always like to cut John a little bit of slack. He's a first century guy living in the 90s AD, and he is trying to write down stuff that he's seeing that is from 20 centuries in the future. Modern armaments and military movements and technologies and everything. And as he's writing it all down, it's pretty fascinating. But I'll close with this. Once again, has anything changed in the last 50 years regarding Bible prophecy? Oh, no. The same Bible prophecies are still there. They're still in the same books that they were looked at in the 1800s, 1900s, the same commentaries. Everybody's looking at it. But although the prophecy hasn't changed, how we interpret it is changing dramatically. And we're going to see more and more and more as we go further into many of these passages and recognize that the technologies today, the telecommunications, the blockchain banking, the fintech that's out there, what's going on with AI, it's absolutely mind-boggling that you can literally take what seem to be metaphorical passages of Bible prophecy, and they now actually make really good sense from the standpoint of what can be done through software and through technology. Father, thank you for this time, and I thank you for this opportunity to go through another passage and look at this in light of today's advances in technology. And certainly, Lord, there are some amazing things that are coming in all these new texts, just as when the computers came out and when phones came out and when the internet was first introduced and online banking and all kinds of telecommunications. And yet, Lord, as we see the advances just so quickly moving forward, Lord, we start to recognize that stuff that's in the magazines, stuff that's in the online journals, stuff that's in the podcasts is stuff that aligns amazingly with your word, as if, whoa, that could be exactly how this is going to happen. That could be exactly how this warfare takes place. So, Lord, as we go through so many of these prophecies and look at it in light of the last 50 years of advances and changes in geopolitics, Lord, I pray that you'd give us an excitement to recognize that your word is true, and that as we read prophecy, Lord, we would recognize it is literal, and it is going to happen, even down to the point that you, Jesus, are going to rule on David's throne in Jerusalem for 10 centuries. And so, Lord, we look forward to that day. We look forward to you coming for your church. It's a promise you made 37 times in the New Testament. And so, Lord, I pray that that would also encourage our hearts, that that is literal, that the rapture is not a metaphor. Lord, I pray that we would live for you every day in expectation that you're coming soon. Maranatha, come quickly, Lord. And help us to be good stewards of reading your word, and that we would be encouraged in our hearts, Lord, that your word is so true, and that your prophecies, your word is literal, and that we can hold fast to it as truth. So thanks for this time. I pray a blessing on each one who came. In Jesus' name, amen.